Tonight we're going to drift slowly into the quiet, surprisingly beautiful history of the key. This small familiar object, often tucked into pockets, dropped into bowls by the front door, or forgotten at the bottom of bags, has shaped human life for thousands of years. Before we begin, a brief note for your safety. Please do not listen to this wander through history while driving or operating machinery. Only listen when you're somewhere you can relax safely and completely. From ancient wooden mechanisms to the intricate metal wards of medieval castles, from the first personal locks to the keys we carry today, the story of the key is really a story about trust, privacy, safety, and the gentle rituals of home. As you settle in, we'll explore how keys evolved, how they travelled across civilizations, and how they became symbols of belonging, protection, and even love. It's a quiet journey through time, designed to help your mind soften and unwind. Imagine yourself drifting back several thousand years to the warm, sandy air of ancient Mesopotamia. Here, in the cradle of early civilization, people began to settle, farm, store grain, and accumulate possessions that needed protection. With this new way of living came a new problem: how to keep things safe. The earliest known locks were simple wooden mechanisms, large, clunky, and carved by hand. They weren't portable and they weren't subtle. But they introduced a revolutionary idea, a barrier that only one person could open. These early locks used wooden pins that dropped into place, and the first keys were long wooden tools with pegs that lifted those pins. They were large, sometimes the length of a forearm, and they looked more like tools than the tiny metal keys we know today. As you picture them, let your breath slow. Imagine the soft scrape of wood against wood, the gentle lift of pins, the quiet satisfaction of a mechanism releasing. Even in their earliest form, keys were about reassurance, the comfort of knowing something precious was protected. As time drifted forward, the Egyptians refined the idea. Their wooden locks became more sophisticated, and their keys, still made of wood, became symbols of status. To own a lock and key meant you had something worth safeguarding. It meant you had a home, a storehouse, a life that needed protecting. Egyptian keys were often large and beautifully carved. Some were so big they had to be carried over the shoulder. But despite their size, they represented something delicate, the idea of personal access. In the warm, golden light of ancient Egypt, keys were more than tools. They were signs of responsibility and trust. A key holder was someone who had been entrusted with something valuable. As you imagine these early keys, let your mind soften into the rhythm of ancient life. The slow movement of workers, the quiet hum of daily tasks, the gentle clatter of wooden mechanisms being opened and closed under the desert sun. The next great shift came with the Romans. They introduced metalworking techniques that transformed the key forever. Bronze and iron allowed locks to become smaller, stronger, and more intricate. And with this change, keys shrank from large wooden tools into compact metal objects that could be carried discreetly. Roman keys were often worn as rings, small, elegant, and practical. A person might walk through a bustling Roman street with their key resting on their finger, a quiet symbol of ownership and autonomy. These metal keys had wards, small internal shapes that matched the lock. This meant each key was unique, crafted for a specific purpose. For the first time, a key became something personal. Imagine the cool weight of a bronze key ring resting against the skin. Imagine the soft metallic click as it turned. These small sounds, these tiny movements, were part of daily life for millions of people across the Roman world. And as you picture them, let your breath deepen. The world becomes quieter when we focus on small, simple things. As centuries passed, keys became more ornate. In medieval Europe, locksmithing was both a craft and an art. Locks were handmade and keys were shaped with intricate patterns, twisting, curling, and branching like tiny pieces of metal lace. These keys were often heavy, with long shafts and decorative bows. They opened doors to storerooms, chests, monasteries, and castle chambers. To hold a key in this era was to hold responsibility. The sound of a medieval key turning in a lock would have been deep and satisfying, a slow, deliberate clunk that echoed through stone corridors. It was a sound that meant safety, privacy, and the closing of the world for the night. As you imagine these keys, let your shoulders soften. Picture the cool stone walls, the flicker of candlelight, the gentle weight of a metal key resting in a palm. There is something soothing about objects that endure across centuries, unchanged in purpose. By the early modern period, keys had become part of everyday life for ordinary people. They were no longer reserved for the wealthy or powerful. Small homes had locks. Shops had shutters secured with iron keys. Travellers carried keys to chests and boxes that held their belongings. With this came the quiet rituals we still recognise today. The moment of locking up before bed, the gentle check of a door handle, the familiar weight of keys in a pocket, the small relief of hearing a lock click into place. These rituals are grounding. They mark transitions, leaving home, returning, settling in for the night. They are gestures of care, both for our possessions and for ourselves. As you reflect on these everyday movements, let your breathing slow. There is comfort in routine, in the soft predictability of actions repeated across generations. Keys have always been part of that rhythm. As keys became more common, they also took on deeper meanings. Across many cultures, a key was more than a tool. It was a symbol, quiet, simple, and powerful. A key could represent authority, like the keys to a city gate or a treasury. It could represent trust, handed from one person to another as a sign of responsibility. It could represent belonging, marking someone as part of a household, a community, or a sacred space. In ceremonies, keys were often used to mark transitions. A new homeowner receiving a key, a caretaker entrusted with a building, a monk given access to a library or archive. These gestures were gentle but meaningful. They acknowledged that a key holder was someone who mattered, someone who had earned access. As you imagine these symbolic moments, let your breath soften. There is something soothing about the idea of being trusted, of being welcomed, of being given a place to call your own. With the Industrial Revolution came machines capable of producing locks and keys with far greater accuracy. What had once been handmade and unique could now be manufactured with consistent precision. This shift changed everything. Locks became more reliable. Keys became smaller, lighter, and easier to carry. Security became accessible to ordinary people on a scale never seen before. Factories produced keys by the thousands, each one shaped with exacting detail. The familiar notched edges of modern keys emerged during this era, small ridges and valleys cut with machine accuracy. Imagine the rhythmic clatter of early factories, the steady hum of metal being shaped, the soft gleam of freshly cut keys cooling on workbenches. These sounds and sights mark the beginning of the key as we know it today. And as you picture them, let your mind drift. Even in the midst of industry, there is a quiet beauty in repetition, in craftsmanship, in the creation of something that will protect and reassure. Among the many innovations of the 18th and 19th centuries was the skeleton key, a simple, slender key designed to open multiple locks of a similar type. It wasn't a master key in the modern sense, but it offered a kind of universal access. Caretakers, innkeepers, and stewards often carried them, using a single key to open many doors. The skeleton key became a symbol in its own right. It represented possibility, mystery, and the idea that one small object could unlock many different spaces. Picture the smooth, narrow shape of a skeleton key resting in a palm. Its simplicity is calming, just a straight shaft and a minimal bit, shaped to slip past wards and lift the mechanism inside. There is something soothing about the idea of a universal key, a tool that opens doors gently and quietly without force. It reminds us that access can be graceful, that solutions can be simple. By the 20th century, keys had become deeply familiar objects. The notched metal key, small, lightweight, and easy to duplicate, became the standard for homes, cars, lockers, and workplaces. These keys rely on tiny variations in height along their blade. Each notch corresponds to a pin inside the lock, and when the right combination aligns, the cylinder turns smoothly. It's a delicate mechanism, almost musical in its precision. A series of small metal pins rising and falling, settling into place with a soft click. Think of the everyday moments you've experienced with keys. The gentle twist of a key in a front door, the soft jingle of a key ring, the quiet reassurance of locking up before bed. These movements are part of the rhythm of modern life. They mark beginnings and endings, arrivals and departures, openings and closings. As you reflect on them, let your breathing slow. There is comfort in the familiar, in the small rituals that shape our days. In recent years, keys have begun to change again. Digital locks, keycards, fobs, and smartphone access systems have transformed the way we secure our spaces. Some keys no longer have physical form at all. They exist as codes, signals, or encrypted data. A tap, a swipe, or a gentle press of a button can unlock a door. Yet even as keys become more digital, the underlying idea remains the same: a way to protect what matters, a way to grant access, a way to feel safe. There is a quiet elegance in these modern systems, invisible signals passing through the air, tiny circuits responding, locks releasing with a soft mechanical sigh. And still, many of us keep a bowl or hook by the door, filled with metal keys that feel familiar in the hand. Old habits linger because they are comforting. As you imagine the future of keys, Let your mind drift gently. Technology may change, but the feeling of safety, of closing the world for the night, remains timeless. Across thousands of years, keys have been constant companions. They have protected grain stores, treasure chests, family homes, and quiet personal spaces. They have travelled in pockets, hung from belts, rested on bedside tables, and jingled softly in bags. A key is a small thing, but it carries meaning. It represents trust, privacy, belonging, and the gentle rituals that help us feel grounded. It is an object that has evolved with us, adapting to our needs while keeping its purpose unchanged. As you settle into rest, imagine placing a key down beside you. Feel the quiet weight of it, the cool metal, the sense of reassurance it brings. Let that feeling soften your thoughts, slow your breathing, and ease you towards sleep. Thank you so much for sharing this quiet moment with me. If you'd like more bedtime stories like this, then please subscribe now. And if there's a topic you'd love to hear as you drift off, let me know in the comments.